The afternoon sun beat down on Willowbrook Estates as I watched from my driveway and ambulances at a tour community's main gate lights flashing urgently siren wailing, but the gate remained stubbornly closed through the Rotiron bars. I could see the paramedics in the driver's seat gesturing frantically at someone. Was Karen Fitzgerald, our HOA president, standing with her arms crossed and that familiar look of smug authority plastered across her face. May ample ease, we need immediate access. The paramedic pleaded through his window. This is a life or death situation. Karen shook her head firmly. I don't care what you claim this is. You need proper authorization to enter Willowbrook Estates. Those are the rules, no exceptions. The paramedic's partner jumped out from the back of the ambulance. Lady, we have a 57-year-old male in cardiac arrest. Every second counts here. Then you should have thought of that before trying to bypass or security protocols. Karen replied with anise tone, I personally oversee all emergency access codes, and I wasn't notified of any scheduled emergency vehicles today as started. Alking closer, my blood boiling. This wasn't the first time Karen had let her power got to her head, but blocking an ambulance was a new low even for her. Listen carefully. The second paramedic said, his voice strained with urgency. Robert Fitzgerald is dying in the back of this ambulance. We picked him up from the shopping center on Maple Street. He collapsed in the parking lot. The color drained from Karen's face so fast I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Robert, my Robert? She whispered the name, hit her like a physical blow. Her hands shook. She fumbled forth a gate override, button on her key fob. What had been a display of petty authority transformed into pure panic. The gate began its painfully slow mechanical crawl open. Let me back up and explain how we got to this moment. I'm Marcus Chenin, and I've lived in Willowbrook Estates for 12 years. It used to be a pleasant enough place until Karen Fitzgerald was elected HOA president 3 years ago. Since then, she turned our neighborhood into her personal kingdom. Karen enforced Devry. Rule with militant precision. Grass couldn't be more than 2.5 in tall trash cans. She had to be brought in within 2 hours of pickup. Holiday decorations could only be displayed within specific date ranges. She even tried to regulate what colors we could paint our front doors. Thought that particular crusade failed after threatened legal action, but her obsession with the gate access was legendary. She changed the emergency codes 4 times in the past year, claiming it was to prevent unauthorized access by fake emergency vehicles. She insisted that Al-Emerge ENSA services call her personal cell phone for pre-approval before responding to any 911 calls from our neighborhood. Most of us thought she was paranoid and controlling. Turns out we had no idea how dangerous her power trip would become. The week before the ambulance incident, I'd watched her berate a new neighbor for having a moving truck arrive without scheduling it through her approved vendor lists. She'd actually stood behind the truck for 20 minutes, preventing it from backing into the driveway until the poor family agreed to pay a $20 unauthorized vehicle fee. This is about maintaining standards. She'd said with a self-satisfied smile, if we don't enforce every rule, chaos follows it. Read reasoning with her once, Karen, don't you think you're taking this a bit too seriously? These are our neighbors, note to me competence. She'd fixed me with her trademark glare. That's exactly the kind of attitude that leads to property values plummeting. Marcus, maybe you don't care about your investment, but some of us do. After that, I mostly kept my distance, documenting her worst excesses in case Weaver built it. No support to vote here out team. Ver imagined her behavior would lead to something this catastrophic. On that fateful Tuesday, Robert Fitzgerald had been running errands while Karen attended her WHOA compliance inspection walks. According to what I learned later, he'd felt chest pains while loading groceries into his car at the shopping center just outside our neighborhood. A good Samaritan had called 911 and the ambulance arrived within minutes, but when they tried to transport him to our neighborhood's closer entrance for the fastest route, Teto, the hospital, they hit Karen's bureaucratic wall. The emergency override code she'd changed the previous week hadn't been updated in the system yet. Another one of her security improvements that she'd implemented without proper communication. As the gate finally opened wide enough for the ambulance to squeeze through, the paramedics wasted Nodime. The vehicle lurched forward, tire squealing. Karen stood frozen for a moment before running to her car, her designer heels clicking frantically on the pavement. It followed in my own vehicle, along with several other neighbors who'd witnessed the scene. By the time we reached the hospital, Karen was already in the emergency room, pacing like a caged animal. Her rougely perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared from tears. They won't tell me anything, she said to Noon in particular. They just keep saying he's in critical condition. He wanted to feel sorry for her, but all I could think about was wasted minutes at the gate, how she'd stood their arms crossed lecturing paramedics about proper protocols while her own husband fought for his life just feet away, the waiting room filled with neighbors. Says word spread through our community's group text, the same group text Karen had tried to control and monitor, insisting all messages got through her for approval first. Now it buzzed with outrage and disbelief. She actually blocked the ambulance type Janet Morrison from Sycamore Lane for at least 5 minutes, confirmed David Park, who lived across from the gate. I have security camera footage after 3 agonizing hours. A doctor emerged. Robert, who'd survived barely the delay, had complicated his treatment, and he'd face a long recovery. If the ambulance had arrived even 5 minutes later, the outcome would have been very different. Karen collapsed into a chair sobbing, but the neighborhood sympathy was limited within hours. An emergency HOA meeting was called by Vice Pre. Cited Thomas Bradley, the community center was packed that evening. I'd never seen such attendance at an HOA meeting. Usually, Karen presided from the raised platform at the front, gavel in hand. Tonight, she sat in the regular chairs looking small, and defeated Bradley called the meeting to order. We're here to address the events of this afternoon and their implications for our community's safety. One by one, neighbors stood to speak. The stories poured out about years of Karen's overreach, her power trips, her creation of Byzantine rules that serve no purpose except to feed her need for control. She made my elderly mother waiting 100 degrees reheat because her visitor pass had expired while she was inside my house. Said Patricia Williams, she tried to find me $500 because my daughter's Girl Scout cookie table is technically a commercial enterprise, added Bruce Kumar. But it was Darcera Mitchell, an emergency room physician who lived on Oak Court, who delivered the most damning testimony. What happened today was not just a mistake, it was the inevitable result of placing personal power above public safety. Those access codes exist for one reason: to save lives. By gatekeeping them, by making emergency services jump through hoops, Karen created a system designed to fail. And today, it nearly killed someone. Karen tried to defend herself. Her voice is shaking. He was just trying to keep us safe from unauthorized access. You all elected Meta maintain standards. We elected you to reasonable oversight, not to play God with people's lives. Thomas Bradley said firmly, I motioned for an immediate vote of no confidence in Karen Fitzgerald as HOA president. The vote was unanimous. Even Karen's usual allies couldn't defend blocking an ambulance, but the consequences didn't stop. Their David Park security footage made its way to local news. These Tory went viral about the HOA president who nearly killed her own husband with red tape within days. Karen faced more than just social humiliation. The State Emergency Services Department launched an investigation into interference with emergency medical services. The county prosecutor's office reviewed the case for potential criminal charges. 3 separate personal injury lawyers contacted Robert about potential lawsuits not against the HOA, but against Nolly for her role in creating and enforcing the dangerous access policies. I was error when she received the formal notice of charges: reckless endangerment, interference with emergency services. The prosecutor offered a plea deal about 2 years, probation, 300 hours of community services, specifically with emergency response organizations, and $50,000. In Karen's hands trembled as she read the document. $50,000, she whispered, but I was just following the rules I created. Her lawyer-hired-looking man in a wrinkled suit shook his head. That's exactly the problem. Mrs. Fitzgerald, you created rules that endangered lives and enforced them even in a life or death situation. The fact that it was your husband is irrelevant to the charges, though it certainly won't help with the jury if this goes to trial. She looked around the room at the neighbors who'd gathered to witness this moment, searching for sympathy. That wasn't their hurrying as their on-fisted ruler of Willowbrook Estates had ended with the worst possible irony. The very control she'd wielded so ruthlessly had nearly cost her everything that actually mattered. I'll take the plea, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The weight of those fines and community service hours crushing the last remnants of her HOA empire.